Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to WD18, the Watford fan channel. Welcome to our post-mortem of Luton 2, Watford 0 at Kenilworth Road yesterday, 12:30. Had a bit of time to process that one. I think someone summed up pretty well on Twitter that it started with the initial anger, but it kind of went to disappointment and just frustration and kind of a little bit of, here we go again, same old story. But really good show lined up today anyway to talk about it and kind of use it as a cathartic experience to tell how we're really feeling about Watford at the moment. So we've got Sam, Charlie, and Dave Cameron Walker from the Rookery end and the Athletic. So Dave, thank you so much for coming on again, mate. I think the last time you came on was midway through the season, if I remember correctly. We did the mid-season review of how we were getting on, and we actually touched on Edwards and Luton at the time, I think. But it's great to have you back on, mate. How you getting on? How you feeling? Any better than
yesterday? I'm all right, yeah. I wish I was joining you in better circumstances. But yeah, as you say, maybe this will be cathartic.
Good man.
Hey, Dave, I wanted to ask, what's the threshold at the moment where if someone asked you, who do you support? Would you say Watford for my sins? Is this, have we reached the threshold for that?
I think so.
Get away with it.
Yeah, we're in that space at the moment, aren't we? I think, yeah.
If you don't laugh, you cry. Anyway, look, the elephant in the room, Luton 2, Watford 0. Sam was there yesterday. Myself, Charlie and Dave weren't. So we'll chuck it over to you first, Sam, as someone who was in the away end at Kenilworth Road. I think before we even get onto the game, just as it was the first derby with fans at Kenilworth Road in 17 years, just the experience of the day, run us through it. What was it like to people who didn't attend? Just give us that kind of idea of and set the scene for us.
Yeah, it was really surreal, first of all. I was speaking to my good mate Luke the night before, and he said it feels like a kid the night before Christmas. Just he was so excited for it. I was more nervous, I'd say. But it's something that sort of you feel like as a Watford fan, at least in my lifetime, it's been building up to this for so long. And it sort of hit me on the morning, waking up at about 6:45 in the morning that, you know, it's finally come, Luton away, actually being able to go to it. Started off, went to pub in Watford at about 8 a.m. I think it was. We were there for a couple of hours.
8 a.m.
We were in Moon Under the Water in town. They weren't actually serving alcohol until 9 a.m. So it was nice spoons. It was a spoon's breakfast, which probably the
I have to say, mate, normally Moon Under the Water is followed by Prism, or otherwise known as Oceana. So
exactly, what Prism or Kenilworth Road? I'm not sure which is worse, to be honest with you. But from there, we went to the ground. Obviously, saw all the coaches lined up, the Harry Potter buses, which was, I thought someone was joking on Twitter, like an April Fool's joke. But then actually getting there and seeing it was, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, to be honest with you. Turning up to our biggest derby in years and going on Harry Potter tour coaches, but yeah, managed to get there. The 25-minute journey to Kenilworth Road took about an hour and a half due to the police escort waiting for the police motorbikes, and obviously only because the Oak Road, I think it's called, where the Oak stand is, could only fit a few coaches in at one time, so it was sort of quite staggered getting into the ground. But we weren't anywhere near the Luton fans in that respect, so we were quite bubbled off, and there wasn't any trouble from what I saw, which is always a good thing. But getting into the ground, there's no away concourse. You go through someone's back garden and go straight into the away end. From where I was, I couldn't really see much because I was stuck right in front of the post. It probably was a good thing. But as much as we sort of, we take the mick out of Luton, and Kenilworth Road being massively inferior to our stadium, but it's quite nice sort of going back to one of those old school stadiums as well. But being there, the atmosphere in the warm-ups was brilliant. But I think it became quite apparent within the first 5 minutes of the game that our players weren't up for it. And we all know what happened next, ultimately. I would say it was a good day out, but very anticlimactic, disappointing. And again, it was the players on the pitch who let us down.
Look, Charlie, we'll get into the game itself. Good to get that insight from Sam, what it was actually like to go, because there was, I think, 800 of you, was it, in the end, Sam?
Yeah, something like that, 800, 850, yeah.
Yeah. Fair play to everyone who went. Actually, you know what, Sam? Just before we get onto the game, there was a video you recorded actually at full time with the players kind of started to come over to the fans, but it was pretty clear that the fans didn't want to show their appreciation to the players. What was your perspective on that for people who didn't see it? So could you explain what happened there?
Yeah, so normally at full time in certain away games this season where we've seen disappointing results, Millwall, Swansea, Blackburn, Middlesbrough, players have come over and there's been a mixture. Some people clapping, some people booing, some people giving out abuse to the players. Yesterday there was no clapping at all, fully. I didn't hear anything overly abusive, but booing, a lot of "you're not fit to wear the shirt," that sort of thing towards the players. None of them really got too close. João Pedro went straight down the tunnel. Sarr went straight down the tunnel. I think probably that I saw the closest person who got to the Watford fans was Christian Kabasele, actually, who wasn't actually starting yesterday. He was on the bench. Dan Bachmann and Hamza Chowdhury both held their hands up and seemed to apologise. All the others, I think, attempted to come over, but saw that Watford fans weren't being receptive at all and just went straight inside. So again, it was quite surreal. I'd never seen anything so sort of unanimously like that. Dave, just going back to football cliches, it was very Everton-esque with the collective boos, I think it was.
I can imagine.
Charlie, moving on to the performance. Where to start, really? I mean, on paper, I'd probably say Wilder put out the best team he had available. What was it? I mean, just your initial thoughts, really. Where did it go so wrong? As Sam said, it was pretty obvious early doors that it wasn't going to be the performance that we'd expect, and obviously the result either.
Yeah, I think fundamentally they wanted it more. They were up for it. The crowd were up for it, and I think we had a good first 5 or 10 minutes when we kind of got in their final third and looked to be attacking. But when it came to challenging for balls, second balls, I think one thing that disappointed me the most was just our passing. We just looked scared. We were passing it out of touch, 5-yard passes. And you knew from early how the game was going to go. I think we've seen that performance. I haven't counted, but I imagine 6, 7, 8 times this season. The one most recently reminded me of QPR, where it's just a battle, a scrap, and they wanted more. I wasn't overly impressed with Luton, but I think they were in first gear, and it was still enough to beat us easily, I'd say, which is pretty damning. I just think we didn't want it more. You can tell on the pitch we weren't up to the fight. I think even in the second half we responded a bit in the early stages, but as the soon game on and petered on, we just couldn't maintain any kind of threat. I know Ngakia had a header which was kind of lofted in. He headed it and it miraculously was just close, and Lou's a shot from about 25 yards. But the XG was 0.06 in a derby. 2 shots, so similar to, I know Dave was at QPR as well. I think it was so similar to that QPR when we lost the battle before, and then you just knew it was going to happen. Once you go 1-0 down, this Watford side have got little resilience. So, like I said, I think when we saw the Harry Potter buses pull up, it was over before it even started.
So,
is our host frozen?
I think Jacob's frozen, yeah. Dave, in terms of, though, Charlie said, I think those first 5-10 minutes was okay, and then it just went rapidly downhill from there. Do you think there was a lack of fight there from the players, particularly in that first half, just not being able to match Luton at all? Yeah,
we all saw it. We saw what Chris Wilder said after the game, and I think there's not anyone who's going to disagree with him. And I'm just so fed up of getting to a position where I convince myself that maybe, if we just win this game, then we'll be back on track. And we're clutching at straws constantly, thinking we're going to see something different as to what we've seen this season. And we've, as you said, Charlie, we've seen that performance. Okay, it was against Luton, so we were expecting the players to understand that occasion and deliver something else, but they're not capable. And we've seen that time and time again this season against really poor teams. That we've not beaten Rotherham this season. Blackpool have beaten us. We failed to beat Preston. We lost to bottom of the table Wigan. Like, this is not the first time this has happened. And this is a team, Luton, who were in 4th and we were in 10th. So we shouldn't really be surprised. Luton, as you say, Charlie, they didn't have to do much to beat us, really. They just looked up for it, scored. That first goal was a quite nice little passing move. Second goal was a set piece, scrappy one, but they get it over the line. And that's all it takes to beat us. And it doesn't matter who, the manager is and which team we pick. The problems have run so deep at this point that, it's almost pointless us talking about the football to a certain degree, looking at the last 7 games, thinking, oh, we could beat some of those teams, but can we? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't, if we barely get, many points left for the rest of the season, to be honest. It was bitterly disappointing. I feel very sorry for all those 850 fans who went there, because again, I was listening to Colin and Kieran on the Rookery End pod, and they were doing their diary of the day and getting excited, and you could hear all the fans singing on the bus, and everyone was up for it in the spoons at 8 a.m. thinking that maybe we could do something, and they've let us down again, and it's very disappointing. And I can't be bothered to go to another match this season, to be honest with you.
I think that's the consensus for a lot of fans now, and I think a lot of fans are starting to think whether they should vote with their feet about this team and the club in general. But Sam, just picking up on Dave's point there, we've mentioned it. I think you mentioned it a number of times. It feels like we could just copy and paste as some of the games that you mentioned there about the performance and the lack of intensity and quality. But we ask ourselves this every time, but who's to blame? Is this, I think one man who probably isn't to blame yesterday is Chris Wilder. I think it was pretty clear. There might have been something you could change tactically, but it probably wouldn't have made any difference. So who do you blame it on here? Is it bigger than just the players?
Yeah, I mean, saying can't really blame Chris Wilder. I did think perhaps he could have urged. I'm not saying he didn't urge. I don't know, but I think instead of taking off Keenan Davis, I would have perhaps tried Davis and Assombalonga together up front. I think we just lack numbers going forward, and perhaps I would have tried that. I would have tried to change the formation maybe, but again, you can't really do much with this Watford side. But he is probably the least to blame. For me yesterday, I'm looking at the players directly, because how can you walk over after the warm-up? They have to walk in front of the away end to go back into the tunnel. How can you look at every single fan in there who are chanting your name in the warm-up and think, I'm not up for this? Because they come out and they're just not. How can they not want to scrap, fight, win every single ball, win every second ball, give 110%? It's just beyond me how you can't do that. It's all the players for me yesterday. And yes, the problems run deeper. We know we've spoken about Gino Pozzo and Scott Duxbury and recruitment, and we can go on about that for ages. Go back and watch our 5-point plan video if you want to see how we try and address it. But Luton away, it's a game on its own. Form goes out the window on Derby Day. It's all about just picking up the 3 points, getting the bragging rights. It's just about the players and who wants it more. And our players just didn't want it yesterday. And for me, I'm disgusted with them, to be honest with you. I'm fuming with them, because I've left some games this season going, do you know what? Maybe on another day we pick something up if we score here. We offered absolutely nothing yesterday. No player can walk away and go, do you know what? I played well and gave everything, because they didn't, and I'm fed up of it, to be honest.
But is that because they don't care, Sam, or is that because they're just not good enough?
It's a mixture of everything. I think they're not good enough. I think they're very badly coached. Doesn't help when you have 3 head coaches coming in during a season and with 3 completely different styles of play. I think some of them are probably eyeing up their next move. Some of them know they won't be here in next season because of how many loans we have. Ultimately, it's just a recipe for disaster, and we saw that yesterday, and we've seen that so many times this season.
Sorry, did you hear, or Dave as well, on the Hive Live? One thing that I did hear was Chris Wilder non-stop barking, encouraging. It really came through, and I think it felt like he put in a bigger shift than the players yesterday. I don't know if you guys heard that, but
I heard it my end. I mean, I also saw a few times where players were kind of giving a little bit back to the coaching stuff. There was one point in the first half where Loser, I think he overhit a cross, and I don't know if you guys remember it, but he turned around to Wilder and his staff and basically started throwing his arms a little bit, and I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you read anything into that, but I heard him, Charlie. I mean, I kind of echo what Sam says, and I think you guys hit the nail on the head there. I don't think there's much more to it, to be honest. That I just wasn't particularly surprised, and I think a lot of people were angry yesterday, and rightly so.
He was in the flow there.
Got
One thing that kind of going on from Jacob's point with the players that, again, we spoke about, especially in our 5-point plan, what you mentioned, Sam, but 100% the players are at fault yesterday. I think the application was just not there at all. But we do have to take a step back and think what environment are they coming into and trying to perform in. So although 100% the players yesterday need to look at themselves, I think we all know the bigger issues. Don't you think, Sam?
I agree with you, and I do think obviously it's a wider problem. We've spoken about it before, but I look at moments yesterday where we give the ball away on the halfway line and players aren't running back, for example. There was a moment where we turned the ball over. We could have easily gone on the counter attack and the ball is played forward, yet no one's running forward to try and create. We're 1-0 down in, I'd argue, one of our biggest games of the season, and players just don't seem to have the hunger for it. I think that comes down to the players, Charlie, just not wanting it. And yes, it goes back to the environment they're in. There's no consequences for them playing badly. They know they're not going to be here next season, or they've got an easy ride because it's the manager who'll suffer. But there was no hunger there, no running, no running. Luton just wanted it more. They bullied us.
Dave, can you remember a time when the fans with the hierarchy and the players has been such a disconnect and such bad vibes at the club?
No, not in my sort of memory of being a fan. I guess, maybe in those sort of early 90s when there was the sort of Jack Petchey and the whole thing that wasn't going very well, those sort of dark few years. Maybe like then, I remember being sort of disgruntled with Ray Lewington and it all falling apart under Boothroyd and this and that, and kind of all the off-field problems we had under Bassini. But there was the difference between then and all those times and now is that all those times there wasn't really much expectation beyond just putting out a good, decent team and doing our best, which we weren't able to do sometimes. But now there's this expectation, very much brought about by the words and actions of the ownership in terms of saying we want to be a Premier League club, best of the rest, all that stuff. So quite rightly, when we don't achieve those standards, the fans expect more. And, look, Sam, Jacob, most of your Watford supporting life, we've been in the Premier League or one of the teams closest to getting into the Premier League. And you can feel that disconnect is a result of the success we've had and the dismay that we now have as a fan base at seeing how increasingly far away we are from getting back to that place. But it's not good. It's not good. And, you saw the attendance against, I think it was the Birmingham game recently on Tuesday night was really poor. I would be surprised if Good Friday, against Huddersfield is it next. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of empty seats there as well. And I think, Gino, I saw Adam Leventhal wrote a piece today for The Athletic saying that if Gino doesn't reflect on this moment after this game, then he never will. And I probably think he won't, to be honest. But you are hoping that there will be a moment of introspection at some point. And if fans do start voting with their feet or making life uncomfortable verbally or whatever at games, hopefully not abusing people too much, but, the atmosphere will not be good. Hopefully that will make someone see sense, but it's a desperate situation at the moment. We feels like we're right back where we were really when he came in. After 10 years, we've had great times, great seasons, cup final, all that stuff. Great team at times, but where are we? We're 11th in the Championship and we ain't going anywhere fast.
I'll just follow up as well, though, Dave, that if you made the comparisons between this era sort of and Bassini, and Bassini era, sort of the first period that I can remember supporting Watford, maybe just before that. But the big difference was that the 11 that we put out in that Bassini era, under Dyche, for example, there were players there who wanted to play for Watford. We had the likes of John Eustace, Lloyd Doyley. You could see they loved playing for Watford Football Club. Is there any player out there yesterday you could go, they love this club, they bleed this club? There's none of that, and I think that's also makes a big difference.
There isn't, because it comes back to the culture of the club and the atmosphere that has been bred by this constant, desperate chopping and changing over the last 4 years, really. Before that, obviously, Gino can quite rightfully point to successes and strategic decisions that he made that he would say paid off. But Gino is acting like a problem gambler who is chasing his losses. And, as the saying goes, when the fun stops, stop. And the fun has long since stopped for Watford. And is Gino enjoying it? Like, does he want this? Is this what he wants? Because it's not good. We're not enjoying it. He can't be enjoying it. It must be humiliating for him. But his motivation is to try and do something about it. And the only way he knows how, clearly, is to keep rolling that dice and to keep trying the same thing to try and get himself out of trouble, and it's clearly not working. His own head coach, who is still, as of this moment, employed, is saying that you need a cultural reset. It's the first standing head coach to come out and really say that and be that open and honest. And whether that, we'll see whether that has any repercussions for him personally. But it's very, very clear for everyone to see. And some people have been saying this for a long time, to be fair to them. But I think almost everyone connected with the club, whether that be supporter, player, employee, whatever, can now see that we're in such a disastrous situation. How can the players the players probably don't want to be there. You can't blame them, because it's such a ridiculous environment. I've just watched Newcastle, Manchester United, different level entirely. But Christ, Newcastle, it's amazing, the team spirit that they were showing. And again, there's money and there's all these factors involved. But that's what a group of players committed looks like. Luton yesterday, they're a club who've been on the up and have been building steadily. And they've had a few changes, managerial changes, but they've retained that togetherness and that sort of world against them sort of attitude. And look where it's got them. Millwall the same. And we're just miles away from that. Even in our good moments, occasionally our good players, and they are still good players, will bail you out. That's what happened when we got promoted last time. We got up because we just about had enough good players in the squad and we got up. But that won't cut it too many times. And you have to do all those intangible things. As Wilder said yesterday, if you're going to win enough football matches to get out of any division. And we're just so badly wanting in all those departments. It's just, putting another head coach in, it's not going to make any difference. Unless there's a deep cultural reset and introspection, the likes of which we thought was going to come last summer. It's not going to change. Yeah,
I completely agree. Sorry, lads, I jumped out there. I was pretty much summing up the performance with that Wi-Fi connection. No, I think you're spot on there, Dave. I mean, just going back, I just dug up Adam Leventhal's article, actually, that you mentioned there. And there was a line he said in it, which is absolutely superb. And he said, the scars of following this Watford team over the past few years mean they're contemplating their loveless relationship with a man who used to excite them. Now he has simply become a distant nemesis. And I think that pretty much sums it up, to be completely honest. Sam, I'll throw it over to you just reflecting what Dave said there. We mentioned about how, we want to see this change. We want to see, and, all the things that Dave's mentioned and what we want to see change. The thing that I'm really lacking at the moment following Watford is hope, to be completely honest, on the pitch, off the pitch, that we're going to see a completely new direction and stuff change and go back to where we want to be. And that's not even when people say, where do you want to see Watford go? It's not even getting back into the Premier League. It's just seeing a team that you connect with, first and foremost, but actually it's enjoyable going to games. And I think this season has been really difficult because I think you made a comparison to previous years, and the one that stands out for me is you mentioned those sort of Dyche teams, even going back to AD Boothroyd. You probably had a less talented team in some respects, but players who were absolutely dying to play for the shirt. And it just feels at the minute it's going to be very, very difficult to see that in the short term. So I mean, we've said it before, but can you really see it changing? I mean, I can't, if I'm completely honest, with him with Gino at the helm at the moment.
No, it won't change. Leopards don't change their spots. Just touching on what you said as well just now, I just find it so ironic that 4 years ago today, we beat Fulham 4-1 at Vicarage Road, going into an FA Cup semi-final. It'll be the 4-year anniversary of that at some point this week. And I think you can pretty much put from that moment when Gerard Deulofeu scored the winner to now is where it all just went downhill. The ending of that season, the year after, COVID, lockdown, relegation, it's just all been downhill over the last 4 years. And it's just that's the thing. I go to, obviously I'm home at the moment, but I go to uni in Birmingham. I'm traveling all over the country every single week, and I'm just sat on the way back every single week now, just going, why on earth did I do that? I get up this morning and think, I look at my calendar and go, oh, I'm going to the Watford game on Friday. I know I don't have to go. I know obviously I don't have to, but as a supporter, I still will go. I'm still going to go and try and back the team, but it's just so difficult because, I say, do any of these players care about supporting the club? because of how they've performed this season, do I really care about any of them? Do I really want to support any of them after what they've served us this season? Probably not, to be honest with you. And Charlie, I know you might have a slightly different perspective on it all, because I know you've had some personal relationships with the players, but do you get excited about watching us?
No, because like the Luton run up, like you said about kind of Christmas Eve, when international break, we had a week for our game, and the only hope I had was it's a derby game, and the players I thought were bang up for it in the reverse fixture, and I thought they kind of got it. I know we had Truce to Kong back then. I know we had his meeting and stuff like that. I just thought there's always a tiny bit of hope. There's always a tiny bit of hope, but 5 minutes, 10 minutes into the game, the way you saw it playing out, you just knew how this game was going to go. And no, I just feel absolute kind of not dread watching it, but just don't really feel anything. I think I was saying to you guys earlier, sometimes after big Watford losses, I'll be in a foul mood for hours and hours. This one, because I just expected it, I was kind of, after 5 minutes, I was like, that's just what we are. That's just how it's going to be. So, yeah, I don't get excited, and that's the one thing that we should watch football for. Until about 5 o'clock, when I saw the teams above us all drop points, and I thought we're only 6 points. Now I'm joking. But football's all about hope, and like I said, this team have been poor this season, really, really poor. And I think the most positive we can take yesterday were Chris Wilder's comments. I know, Jacob, you touched on it. What did you make of them?
Yeah, I mean, we'll just run through those now. So Andrew French was the first scene. I think it was in the mix zone that Wilder had said these quotes after the defeat yesterday. Just kind of the top lines from his kind of post-match thoughts. So the best team won. If we carry on like that, then we'll be in mid-table. There's no hiding place today. This is a proper derby. The opposition players play. They knew that. Think it might need a full cultural reset here. He went on to say, we have players who were so-called talented players. How many times did we turn the ball over? The fans want to see a team, and their reaction at the end of the game said everything. I'm hurting. Other players, you'd have to ask them. And then finally, I'll put my head on the pillow tonight knowing I did everything I could before today. And then on the day, it might be damning, but I wonder if the players can say the same. So, Dave, I think you mentioned it a couple of times whether actually this could be, I know we're kind of predicting the future, but, it wouldn't shock you if that was the end of Wilder just because he's kind of called out what everyone's thinking. Just your thoughts on those quotes, and I guess it's fair to say he pretty much said what we were all thinking, right?
Yeah, I do wonder. Whilst the evidence on the pitch sort of completely backs up his point, I do wonder if there's a little bit of self-preservation going on in this. He knows that he's probably going to be looking for a new club in a month or so's time, or whatever, when the season finishes, and he doesn't want his reputation to be damaged by this bunch of players and by us finishing mid-table and him not improving our fortunes. So it's very rare that you hear a manager come out and criticise his players in that sort of way without them soon leaving a football club. Look at what happened to Antonio Conte a few weeks ago. It's not dissimilar sort of comments, really, tone of voice, and he's gone. So it wouldn't surprise me. Nothing would surprise me at this club. We've how many games did we have left when we sacked Pearson? 2 games was it left in that Premier League season? You could easily, if we could lose another couple, and he might just go, well, we'll try someone else will pitch up and give us a go. In some ways, like you say, it's perhaps the only sort of little bit we can kind of cling to yesterday and sort of say, finally, sort of someone's addressed the elephant in the room. Someone's publicly taking Gino on or the club on in that way. But one thing I'm sort of wondering is, like, what did he say to the players? If he's saying that in public, what did he say to them in the dressing room? What's training going to be like today, tomorrow, whenever it is they're next back in? I don't know what to. I genuinely don't know where we are now for the rest of the season, because that was such a watershed moment. It was such a big game for us. It felt do or die, and we died big time yesterday. So what does he do? Well, 7 games left. We have to play him. We've got to still try, and we're only 6 points off. All that sort of thing. If we won 6 or 7 of those remaining games, who knows where we'd end up? But we can't win 1 game at the moment, let alone 6 or 7. But I think it could be really poisonous between now and the end of the season, given Wilder's gone all out there, and if he does get sacked, then kind of that's it, job done for him. But if he doesn't, and he's just got to limp on for 7 games with the players that hate him, he hates the club, the fans hate the owner. Like, it's not good.
Christ. I mean, it could go 2 ways, right, Sam? I kind of had this debate in my mind, and what Dave's mentioned about how do we play out the final few games of the season, because it is such a weird conundrum. I think we've all kind of processed that was our last chance at playoffs. We had to win yesterday. We didn't. I think we all know it's pretty much done. Although mathematically we are technically still in it, but I can't see it. We're not going down, and we're just kind of floating around mid-table. What would be the right statement now? Because I've seen some people say, they actually really respected Wilder for doing that. They think there's not many better head coaches in the league if we're looking ahead to next season. You give him a 3-year deal. Not that's going to happen. Let's just say hypothetically, you give him a 3-year deal. You say, look, you're going to be here next season. Then he can start to stamp his authority on the team and kind of pick who he knows he's going to be there and give a little bit of responsibility to some of these players because it's been lacking. Or do you go, you know what, just see out to the end of the season, rotate it with some young lads, give them some time, let the fans kind of just see out the season? How would you play it?
I mean, I'd keep Chris Wilder, to be honest with you. I've seen enough in terms of the comments as well that I would try and keep him. Not necessarily because he's doing a good job, because performances haven't been that good since he's come in, but because let's say tomorrow comes out and says, do you know what, we're giving him a 3-year deal. That gives the players consequences. They're going to have to be fighting now for the shirt for next season if they still want to be at this football club. But no, they all know that, all right, Chris Wilder doesn't like us. Let's go through the motions. Someone will be here next season, and it's rinse and repeat. So I'd keep him here in the long term. What realistically will happen? I don't know. A poor result on Friday, followed by, let's say, I don't know, Millwall and Coventry also lose. We'll still be 6 points off with 6 games to go. Would anyone be that shocked if they roll the dice? I sound ridiculous saying that, but we all know how this football club works. Personally, let's say, I don't know, if they did get rid of him, I'd just give it to Charlie Daniels and play the under-21s for the rest of the season, because at least they have something to prove. But I want to keep Chris Wilder for the long term. Realistically, it'll probably stay till the end of the season, and that's all.
There's no more dice left in Manchester, is there? Watford, sorry. No more dice left. They've all been rolled.
There's no dice anyway, mate. London, Colney, Watford. there's none. Lou Orns in the comment section. Good to see you, mate. I genuinely play the players who will be here next season. Granted, the club won't think that way, but I don't see the point in playing the likes of Chowdhury, Davis, Starr, etc., who all 3 will be moving on. Pedro, I'd imagine, as well. Jack says, I think Wilder is a hero for what he said, calling out these players in this club for what they are. We've had so many managers give their boring media-trained rubbish. Fair play to him. Jack says, we could easily get sucked in a relegation battle next season with some of our so-called good players leaving and keeping our dead wood. Lee, I really hope the Watford hierarchy watch this and the other YouTube broadcasts understand the utter dejection being expressed. I doubt not. I think, Dave, and obviously with your involvement from the Rookery end, and this is an interesting point from Lee, it does seem like there is a lack of acknowledgement of how the fans are feeling at the moment. And it felt like that for a while at board level, particularly. We've had a few statements here and there. Do you rate? I know it's hard to answer, but does it feel like to you that there is a bit of there is clearly a disconnect between the fans and board level, but it doesn't seem like they're really appreciating how we're feeling at the moment, judging by what's been happening. Is that fair?
I think there'll be a lot of people at the club who are very aware of how the fans are feeling. There will be fans who work for the club who feel the same as we do, no question. And some of those might be quite senior people. But the big question is, does Gino understand? So I think even Scott Duxbury probably has a fair idea of how we all feel, and I'm sure he's probably not feeling great about his position himself, given the Edwards thing we all talked about, especially after yesterday, and seeing that would have really hammered it home to him. But the big question is, does Gino understand? I don't know. Does Cristiano Gioretta understand? What's he do? What's he still doing here? What's his job? Ben Manga. and Helena Costa, all those figures, do they understand? But the most important one is Gino. Does Gino understand how we feel? I doubt he's sitting here listening to some of these, watching WD18 or listening to From the Rookery End or going on the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes Twitter space. But, are people within the club empowered to talk to him in that way and tell him how he's feeling? We have seen, obviously, the recent announcement that he's going to attend a meeting with some fans. And again, there's been some quite fair sort of reactions to that in terms of how's this going to work, who gets invited, what's it all about, are we going to be able to question him or not, is it going to be released publicly, all those questions. Again, I don't think the club have handled that brilliantly, to be honest with you. But if he isn't aware to this point, and we start, the one way that he really will be aware is if he starts seeing crowds repeatedly of like 10, 11,000 at games. He hasn't been to games recently, obviously, because of various reasons or whatever. But he usually, most weeks, he'd be there if all things being well. And if he starts to see the crowd dwindle and we're just stuck in the mud in the Championship, he will feel it. But will that change the way he operates? I'm still not sure.
No.
Jake, do you guys want to do the player ratings now before we move on?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, good point. We went a bit of a tangent there. Went all the way from Kenilworth Road to Gino Potter. Anyway, we'll move on. So, player ratings, Charlie, I'll throw it over to you, mate. Charlie's going to be the player ratings. Fire them over.
We might, you might only need one hand for these ones, but let's start with Sam, Dan Backman.
I'll give Dan a 5 for yesterday because being behind the goal in the first half, he made one of the most brilliant saves I've ever seen live. I haven't watched it back. I watched the highlights, but at the time it looked like an unbelievable save and made a couple of good ones as well. His kicking is absolutely dreadful. It is so bad, and he's glued to his line the whole time. I'd actually give him a 4, to be honest with you, because he also played.
He deserves an extra point just for that save in the second half.
You know what? I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, Sam. I think it should be
put his body on the line.
I think 4's harsh. I mean, without Backman yesterday, I think it's 4.
He nearly gave up a goal as well when he played it into Hamza Chowdhury, who was in our own box, and Chowdhury wasn't expecting it at all. We'll go with the 5 then for Dan Backman.
It's up to you. I just felt there was the save. I mean, I don't know what you thought, Dave, but there was a couple of saves. The one from point blank, I thought I didn't expect him to save it, and that was at 0-0, if I remember correctly. Mm. I know it didn't make a difference to the game, but I do think it could have been worse without him.
Yeah, I mean, Backman, the sort of performance that he delivers most weeks. He's a really good goalkeeper in terms of stopping the ball from going into the net most of the time. Good saves, makes a lot of good saves, different sorts of saves with his feet, with his body, with his hands. Bit suspect on crosses, not a great kicker. We know what we're going to get from him. And he also, to be fair to him, he seems like one of the few that does really care about the club as well. We've spoken to him on the Twitter Spaces, Charlie. He does seem like he gets it. But
he did save one with his Corey, so that deserves a point.
Rest in peace, his testicles.
Yeah, we'll quicken these up. But Jacob, Ryan Porteous, straight off his clean sheet against Spain.
Yeah, I would have to say I was disappointed with Porteous. There was an issue at the start where it was a couple of times he went down holding his face, and I thought, okay, he's playing the game here. He's trying to get himself in the game. We've heard about what he was like in the Hibs derby. I just felt that one thing I'd really struck with him, which I noticed, was the amount of times he turned his back. There was a lot of times where he's closing players down and he's literally turning away, and you're like, is your centre back? Gotta be throwing yourself out there. So for me, I think it's got to be low. I'd probably go 3.
Can we just give them all 0 and move on?
Yeah, someone did say that in the comment section. Lee, I think, said 0 across the board. Jack 0. Lee Woman says I'm with Sam. Backman is so bad.
Let's quicken it up, but we'll try and give any sort of positives if there is any, but I doubt it. Dave Cathcart.
To be honest with you, I was watching the game on my phone, just sort of despairing at everything I was seeing. I can't remember anything he did.
I'll say It was his worst performance in a Watford shirt I've ever seen from Cathcart. Worst performance I've seen from him. Give Dave Wesley who, I'll give Cathcart a 0.
Dave Wesley who?
2.
Jacob, Imran loser.
1.
Sam, Hamza Chowdhury.
2.
Dave, Ismail Kone.
Jesus Christ. It was just me or Dave?
Dave.
Oh, 3.
Jacob, Joe Pedro.
Oh, that was Pedro's worst performance in a Watford shirt by far. He was 0, 1.
Sam.
Terrible.
Sam, Ken Sema. Done a good bit of work once on the left wing.
Yeah.
Calling back to Joe.
But he went. I love Ken. 2. I'll give him a 2 because that was a nice run, but didn't do enough.
I also feel like we should give Ken Sema 1 more mark just for the fact every single throw he got absolute pelters. You know, I don't even score it every time he went over. I was like, geez, I'm sorry for that.
Jacob, Jeremy and Gakia. We're almost at the end.
Jeremy Gakia, 1.
Dave finishes up with Keenan Davis.
Yeah, 1.
And that was player ratings. We'll be back with brilliant next week. Over to
I can't
you.
believe. So running through that again, right? So we've got just quickly. So Backman, we gave him a 5. Cathcart 0. Porteous, what was that?
I gave him a 2.
No one else got more than 3.
Yeah,
No.
That's a new low for WD18.
But I think the thing is that is a fair reflection of how I think a lot of people were feeling watching that and how we saw the game. You know, we're not going to just put roasting the glass on it for the sake of it. That was how it played out, right? I mean, you know, the one player that I was really disappointed on, and one player that I was like, God, he's got to turn up, was Pedro. You know, I don't want to slate him because he's my age, like he's still, he's really young, but I think when you need your big players to turn up, which, as Dave mentioned, you rely on in a team which isn't a very good team, it's just relying on individuals to turn up. When he doesn't, then you're in trouble. And then the fact that he then gets booked for shanking a ball into the stand, you just like, they pretty much summed it up.
That did win me a bet, though. That did win me a bet. JP picked Luton to win, but
the betting, Jesus.
The one man again. I'm not one to dig out dig out individual players, but I was so disappointed with Imran Loser. I've been so disappointed with him since he was injured, but since he's been back from injury. But it just seemed whenever we thought he'd come into the side and be that link between defence, midfield, and attack, but he hides away from the ball. He hides behind other players. He physically, he's not at it at all, and gave the ball away every single time he had it yesterday. I was so disappointed with him.
One thing I wanted to bring up was a couple of the fan comments. Actually, we put a tweet out earlier about us kind of going live today with Dave and the guys to just get your thoughts, and we retweeted a couple. And I'm just going to fire over some questions over to the guys. So there was one which, I mean, this in the zone just listed so many questions. What's our plan B? What's our financial position? Will Wilder remain here until the end of the season? Why aren't the players responding on the pitch? Why, for the love of God, can't we pass the first man when taking corners? How can the fans force change in strategy? So I'll throw this one over to you, Sam, that last one. How can us, the fans, force a change? Because it can't really continue like this.
It's difficult because Watford fans have never been the sort to storm the pitch or form a march before the game, that sort of thing. But
on the Bassett, did we do that? I feel like we did on the Bassett. Maybe. Sorry, Karen.
Yeah, in my recent memory, at least, we've never been fans to really do that. Obviously, that was the famous Walt sign of even though he'd already left that woman holding up the Mazzari sign outside the stadium. But I think the fans will just vote with their feet. I think, as Dave said earlier, like the Birmingham game, I think the Coventry game on Friday is going to be completely empty. I think people will just enjoy their bank holiday rather than going. But to be honest with you, there were fans who tried to get banners into Stoke away. I had a good friend who tried to get a banner into Stoke away, but they were taken away upon entrance into the stadium. It's a big question. To be honest, protesting isn't for me. So I think you have to ask fans who'd want to protest what they do.
I think Dave's got it bang on in the sense that I think, when there's 10,000, 11,000 people turning up, that's when it probably starts to sting a little bit more, and we might see something. But before I forget, I actually thought out of everyone, Asprilla, when he came on, looked okay, is what I would say. There was a couple of times his touches, he was getting on the ball. I mean, physically he needs to improve, but I just wanted to say that I think out of everyone, he was all right. From my point of view anyway. I'll throw this thought over to you, Dave, and just interpret it how you want to. Steve, actually, this one got quite a bit of pickup. He said, this season is over. The Potsos won't change their philosophy and we'll be stuck with them again next season. We will get a new head coach in and we'll lose Sarr and Pedro for peanuts. The teams coming down have much bigger and better squads than us, mid-table at best. And I'm referring to next season. So kind of just that thought. And next season, it's such a loaded question, but what do we do now? Like, what do we do? If you're Gino Pozzo, you're sat there, what would you do in his position?
Try desperately to find someone with loads of money and sell would be my first idea if I was Gino. But even that's probably not as easy as it would have been a few years ago, given the economy and everything around it. It's a concern because the finances aren't going to get any better. We did so well we're so lucky in a way to get back up first time when we got relegated in that COVID season. To get straight back up meant that we might have just got away with it there. But then that disastrous season last time around to bring us down again. And because we've gone up and down, the parachute payments means we've only got 1 year left of parachute payments. So if we don't, we're going to have to sell players in the summer. We have to do that every summer to get a significant amount of money in. Pedro, Sarr, loser. I mean, who else are you going to sell? I'm not sure. You can shift a few out to Udinese and do that old trick again. But the financial picture is the big thing. It's a complicated thing. The club will defend their position and say we're okay, this, that, and the other, and there's the loans and all that sort of stuff. It's difficult for us to unpick it here, but it stands to reason that the longer you're out of the Premier League, the worse the finances will be. And if there are less fans coming to the games, even less money is going to be coming in through the coffers each week. So it is a really concerning moment for us. You could very easily see a situation where if we don't make the right decisions and we don't recruit the right players, we don't get enough money in for the players we want to sell, that next season we are in a much worse situation than we've been in this season. But that isn't to say that it's not without hope. We have done it before. We have got promoted. We have managed to rebuild the squad. We basically changed the whole squad most seasons, really, apart from the odd sort of area here and there. So we're always going to have hope, but it is hard because is Gino going to change? As we've said repeatedly, probably not. The thing that you would like us to do was the thing that we tried to do last summer, and that's hire someone like Rob Edwards, who's promising, and try and build around him. Lasted 10 games, and we're back there again, saying that's what we should do again. So it's difficult.
Yeah, it is. I think it's bang on. Moving on to actually, I thought this one over to you, Charlie. Just someone who's obviously got quite a close relationship with the players, so feel free if you want to pass it on. But Jack says, you may have discussed this, but I'm honestly curious. Who in our squad do you honestly think care? If we were to get relegated tomorrow, for example, how many of them do you think would be genuinely upset? Or maybe it's quite tough to answer that, but how many are you looking at for next season going, you know what, they have to stay. They have to be in the team. I think that's probably a better question.
Yeah,
but Jack,
I'm looking at the first team players here. And yeah, feel free to disagree in the comments. I think it's realistic that Daniel Backman's going to stay, although I think we could upgrade. I think Jeremy Nkaki is going to stay because we need a body. Mario Gaspar, I think he's got a short-term contract. I doubt Hamza Chowdhury is going to do his clause. I think they could cash in on loser maybe. Tom Cleverley, me personally, I'd keep him around if we can get him on lower terms, just because of some form of leadership. We're going to need somebody's. Ishmael Kone, one promising player who I'd like to have in that team and try and build on. Ken Sema, I'd want in there. João Ferreira. Kamara's going to go to Udinese. Is Craig Cathcart's contract up this summer? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's him, Gosling and Klebs who will expire.
I actually think I actually think it might be wiser to move on for Craig and try.
Yesterday changed my mind on Craig. I would have kept him, but after yesterday, move him on.
Yeah, with Ryan Porteous keeping Yasser Asprilla. I said about Porteous, Sar's going to go. Tom Dele-Bashiru, I think he's been great when he's played this season. Acuna's going to go.
You're looking at how many players is that? Maybe like
James Morris. So that's James Morris, Wesley Hoot.
Yeah, I like Hoot.
Yeah,
Tom Dele-Bashiru, Porto, Asprilla, Kone, Ken, Zhao, Cleverly, Ngakia, Batman. So we got 11 players. There you go. That's all you need.
Couple more points. I'm just gonna just to wrap up. Thanks to everyone who got involved today. Some really interesting points. So Luan said, on the point of changing, Udinese were in the same situation as us from a culture standpoint 4 years ago. Fans stormed the training ground and Gianpaolo acted by bringing in Marino. It can be done. Now, I can't see Watford fans storming London Colney anytime soon.
Well, that's the answer then. Let's all get down to Colney tomorrow morning.
But
Luan, you can lead the way.
Protesting outside Wendell's at the Vicarage Road. Now, I'm joking. But I can't. I mean, this is the interesting thing on a serious point. I mean, obviously, the culture of Italian football is very different to English football in that respect. I couldn't see that happening, and I don't think Watford have ever really been a club who would do something like that from a fan's point of view. I mean, from my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but the last time I really felt like it got properly toxic in a ground was actually, I'll probably cast it back. So I thought the final day when Mazzari left was pretty bad, actually. I remember the atmosphere was not great that day at all because he put two goalkeepers on the bench, which probably wasn't a start. But even Hodgson, it was pretty bad. But when you're looking at it and you're comparing it to other teams, Dave, I never feel like it will ever go beyond probably that, if we're honest. It would have to be really bad for that to happen, don't you think?
Definitely. I mean, there have been a few examples. I think Blackpool fans protested quite strongly, and eventually they got rid of the Oystons. I think Manchester United fans, Chelsea fans went around the Super League. Manchester United fans stormed Old Trafford, didn't they, before a game a couple of years ago? So it does happen here and there. But I can't see our fan base. No. Not to disrespect anyone, but I can't see us. We're not the most boisterous of fan bases at the best of times, are we? I don't think we're going to go and start tearing down the training ground, whether that would be a good idea or not. But the point I'm making, I don't. The thing is, it's not a democracy. It's still private business, although it might feel like a public institution, and I think it should be viewed as such. What can we do? We're not shareholders. It's not a public company. Gino can do what he wants. He could run the club into the ground if he wants. There's no one to stop him. So it would be down to his conscience. If we were to protest in whatever way at grounds, verbally, staying away, whatever that may be, organising some, through the supporters trust or whatever that may be, it still has to take him to sit up and go, okay, all right, I hear you. I'm going to change. And there's not a lot of evidence to say that he'll do that.
No. And just to clarify, Luan's here, we weren't on you about storming the training ground, but I think the point was more in terms of whether the fans would protest against the ownership at the minute. One over to you, Sam. I saw a question about Elton actually, which I wanted to throw over. Here we go. I saw you put a tweet out the other day actually. Geordie says Elton said when he's done touring, he wants to be more involved with the club. What do you think he means by this?
I've been thinking about this. I wouldn't want Elton involved in football operations directly. I think we all know that wouldn't be a good idea necessarily. Not because Elton's got the. We all know he's got the best football knowledge particularly when it comes to Watford. But I think probably we need someone with more knowledge of today's game at least. But first of all, in an ideal world for me, it would be speak to a couple of his rich mates, maybe form a consortium, that sort of thing, get some investment into the club. But I think more than anything, just having him more on site, getting the identity of the football club back on track, that DNA, get that back on track as well, the connection between the fans and the club. A game like yesterday, imagine having Elton in the dressing room beforehand or at half time. I'm not saying he would have done anything, but it's just more having that figure there, I think, would go a long way. But I think I want to see more than just him being an ambassador for the club. I'd want to see him at least trying to secure some sort of investment for the club.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There was one more question. Moving. Someone said, bring back Troy, get the dressing room sorted. Interesting one, this, Charlie, actually. Max says, yesterday may have been the best thing to ever happen to our club since Gino took over. That's one way of flipping it.
I don't know. I preferred the promotion down at Brighton.
But in the respect, I get what I know. Max is it's a bit of, he's obviously exaggerating. But I think what he's trying to say here is whether it's a watershed moment, because it has felt like it has just been simmering and bubbling, and it's just really started to go. And it felt yesterday it just went over the top, and everyone has just gone. It felt like yesterday everyone realised that something had to change. Whereas I think some people, I think it's fair to say, had probably had the blinkers on a bit more, and there was definitely a mindset of be careful what you wish for. And I think yesterday was definitely one of those which was like, well, I'd much rather if we're saying be careful what you wish for, then what we're seeing at the minute, sort of thing. So what would you make on that whole situation? Sorry, I'm just kind of interested.
That's all right. I think the scepticism comes from just the lack of evidence we've seen from Gino. They've said a couple of times, we thought this is what we were getting in the summer with the Rob Edwards appointment. I would love to welcome a bold statement saying, I don't know, Chris Wilder, do you know what I mean? You're getting that. We want you in charge. Or we haven't mentioned Ben Manga today. He's made a big step in appointment him. Is he going to release a statement and say, I'm going to take a step back? Ben Manga will have full control of football operations and be able to run that. That's what we spoke about in our 5-point plan. That would be encouraging. So, yeah, that comment, if we do see some action from it, it'd be great. My fear is 10 games into next season, when it's not going well, Gino's going to Gino.
Yeah. And that was one of the questions, just to look on final thoughts. There was a comment by Luke, who I know went yesterday to the game, and he put the question out, how would a summer rebuild look like? Would we want to keep Wilder on? Personally, 100% would have him. So from my perspective, I think it'd be a great appointment for us, actually, in terms of the personality of the guy, but also his track record in the Championship. Now, I know it didn't pan out the way he would have wanted to at Middlesbrough, but he's shown at Sheffield United and previous clubs that he can deliver in this division, and he would. I think the name of Chris Wilder does carry in this division, and when we're looking to recruit players, people look at him and go, you know what, I would want to play for Chris Wilder. And there's probably players that he's already worked out that he'd want to keep, and some that he, if he was going to stay, wouldn't want to keep. Wouldn't want to keep. So from my perspective, Dave, I'd want to keep it. And I just wanted to go around everyone. If you said now, would you keep Chris Wilder on for next season? What would you be a yes or no on that one?
100%. I definitely would take him, because I think he's about the best you could hope for in terms of ticks so many of the boxes, knowledge of the division, good track record, decent coach, all of that stuff. But I can't see it happening, because look at the way he was talking yesterday. Look at the language he was using. They need a cultural reset here. The people, he was talking as if he was a pundit. He wasn't talking like he was the head coach. To me, it feels like he's already accepted that this isn't going to last very long, and he's not going to be short of offers. I don't think there'll be clubs in this division who will be looking at him, to be honest with you. So I would love to think that we could keep him, but I just can't see it.
Sam?
Yeah, I'd keep Chris Wilder. I think Dave, you're right there in terms of the checklist of what you want in a Championship manager. I think, with the exception of what happened at Middlesbrough, and even then there were still some positive signs. I think Chris Wilder would be the perfect man. It's been a long-term project. Can I see it? Absolutely not.
I think that's even the thing, though, guys. Right? I'm looking at Chris Wilder and I'm thinking, you mentioned how many boxes he ticks. But even then, we said that about Rob Edwards, how many boxes he ticked in terms of what we wanted, and then we didn't get the backing at all, did he? So it's almost like the idea of it can be as good as you want, but unfortunately, if the approach doesn't change, then nothing will. But Lou, just to wrap up, so I'll bet you any money Stephen Gerrard will be our new head coach. Bloody hell.
Wow.
Oh, God. Look, I think that's where we wrap up. Any final thoughts, Charlie, Sam, Dave? You wanted to finish on?
I hope Mario Gaspar's had a safe trip back to Watford today after turning up to Luton a day late.
We one thing we haven't mentioned about the game on Friday is that it's Neil Warnock's coming back to Vicarage Road, a familiar friend of ours. They just beat Middlesbrough at the weekend. So
before that,
yeah, not going to be easy.
I saw QPR imploding yesterday as well, and I was looking at their last win. I wonder who that was. There we go. I think that's where we'll probably leave it. Thanks to Dave, Charlie, Sam for coming on today. Thanks to everyone who watched. We got some really, really good numbers. Don't know whether loads of Luton fans have just hijacked the stream and wanted to see us start crying, but we managed to keep it pretty calm. Thanks to the guys. Thanks to everybody who watched. Really do appreciate it. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like, but most importantly, subscribe to us if you want to see some more Watford fan content. Check out Dave's stuff on The Athletic, but also from the Rookery end. Those guys did, as Dave said, a diary of the day, which obviously didn't pan out very well, but to get that kind of authentic day in the life of what it was like to be a Watford fan yesterday, make sure you do go and check it out. And we'll catch you in the next stream. Cheers, guys. Take care and have a good rest of your Sunday.